Hello, my name is Jacco Zwetsloot. Today I am moderating this discussion for the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation in South Korea. And I'm joined by Dr. Christina Chen. Thank you for joining me today, Christina.
Thank you, Jacco.
And also joining me is Rajoli Siddharth Jayaprakash. Thank you for joining me today, Siddharth.
Thank you, Jacco.
What are the implications of this China-DPRK-Russia dynamic for Southeast Asia, especially in terms of deterrence, regional balancing, or strategic autonomy?
I think that Russia's response to the concept of Indo-Pacific is important to note here, because in Russia's conception of Indo-Pacific, Russia has vehemently criticized the concept and said that it's ideationally challenging China's bulwarking China's peaceful rise in the region. And the reason is because Russia has opined that ASEAN remains the sole arbiter in the region's security architecture, which means that the Southeast Asian region's security architecture is ASEAN. So in Russia's calculus, ASEAN remains is an important actor, and several ASEAN countries like Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia and Indonesia purchase Russian weapons and have long-standing relations with Russia as well. So with China's economic presence growing in the region, I think there's some kind of tango going on here. Now, I don't understand how the DPRK factor shapes the Southeast Asian region, but certainly we are expecting a churn in Southeast Asia as well, because on one hand you have external factors such as from the United States, with Trump imposing tariffs on these countries. So some of them will be losing out on revenue and some of them will be impacted by these developments. So it's pretty certain that we will have China, Russia moving in and maneuvering in Southeast Asian region to strengthen their relations. Another thing we can also see is the regional and multilateral organizations gaining more prominence, like the non-Western ones, Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, for instance. Some of the Southeast Asian countries have actually talked about joining BRICS.
Okay, Christina, what do you think?
I think for deterrence, it becomes more complex, because when you see the consolidation of DPRK, China and Russia, for Southeast Asia or for the Indo-Pacific as a whole, we do definitely see rising aggression and tensions in this region. For Southeast Asia, when you see those three countries coming together, even though there's underlying tensions and they are binding together for more strategic reason, but there are signs that they are growing, they are supporting each other, then that gives China or any other parties in this trilateral more confidence and more room to do whatever it is doing right now. So going back to the aggressions, that means China is less constrained to do, we call them gray zone tactics, using law, using maritime patrols, using economic coercions against Taiwan, against the Philippines, and maybe against other partners in the Indo-Pacific region. So deterrence will become more complex because this consolidation of the trilateral gives China, for now, more room to maneuver, to use whatever it is doing right now. For strategic autonomy, I think it means that Southeast Asia will have to come up with some new ways to deal with this rising aggression from China and maybe from other countries in the trilateral. Southeast Asia is known for hedging strategy. Right? It sides more with the US for security and sides more with China for economic reasons. With the rising geopolitical tensions now, I think it becomes harder and harder for the countries in Southeast Asia to continue with that hedging strategy. Siddharth pointed out the Laos and Cambodia. They are definitely siding more with Russia. But Vietnam and the Philippines, on the other hand, more with the United States, and also Japan and other allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific region. So Southeast Asia, or ASEAN as a whole, is showing internal disparity, if not division, when it comes to strategic autonomy. If we want to see the region as a whole in countering the rising pressure from China or from the trilateral, that regional impact is not as stable and strong in that sense. For regional balancing, we're definitely seeing developments in that. So individual countries in the region are taking their own initiatives when it comes to balancing. But going back to the previous point, if you consider Southeast Asia as a whole, and there is definitely more needs to consolidate, regionally speaking, I think that poses a question.
So is there a realistic step or a couple of steps for ASEAN as a group that would improve deterrence without necessarily choosing sides? Christina?
I would say ASEAN's principle is using the platform to discuss dialogues, to reach consensus. That's one of the main pillars of ASEAN, dialogues and consensus-based. After all, ASEAN has been around for years. It's very mature, and they come up with creative plus initiatives. So ASEAN could definitely use the platform to its advantage for the members to continue on, with dialogues, to discuss about ways to come up with, I think, a new approach, because I think the hedging is less and less viable. But Taiwan is definitely I think, a good partner to be included in this kind of initiative.
Siddharth, do you agree that, that hedging rhetoric by Southeast Asian nations, we've kind of run up against the limitations of its use, that it's no longer giving the effects or the positive benefits that countries might want?
No, I think hedging still has its benefits. I mean, even though Trump tariffs make it difficult for countries to pursue their economic engagements, but still the hedging strategy, I mean, it's the mainstay of ASEAN in ASEAN countries in general. Like they have been hedging for quite some time now. So I don't think the strategy will change. Even if you equate it with Vietnam's bamboo diplomacy, for instance, these things will continue to remain relevant because the world order has considerably shifted, and there is a rapid multipolarization that has taken place. I mean, not in a sense that US's role in the system is completely removed, but then still states have a lot of wiggle room, even when the tariff aggrandizement goes on. So I don't think that hedging in Southeast Asia is irrelevant. I think it's very much relevant and very much part of the discourse.
Now, Siddharth, Christina mentioned earlier that some countries like Laos and Cambodia are sort of being drawn into Russia's orbit in terms of military sales and things like that, rather than China or the US. Can you unpack a little bit what's the attraction for Russia in Southeast Asia and vice versa?
Their dependence was since the Cold War era as well, and a lot of the Southeast Asian countries' dependence on Russia is in the defense realm. Now, the advantage with doing business with Russia in the defense realm is technology transfer becomes an easier prospect, and the fact is domestic manufacturing also becomes much easier, and you don't need a clearance from the State Duma for manufacturing weapons or something, because if you do business with a Western country, for instance the United States, you need clearances from the Congress and Senate on on transfer of weapons and technologies. And with Russia, I think these countries still feel easier to do business with. And not only that, when you're used to a certain military system for years and years, you can't just switch it and change it over time. You need the money as well, and Russia gives a lot of incentives as well. And also, I believe it is not. It's been only a few months since Russia concluded its unofficial ASEAN summit. With Russia's engagement with ASEAN countries is pretty strong. Like it's been going on for years. So and another element also is the Cam Ranh base in Vietnam. So even though in the early 2000s and till 2015, 2016, there was not much seen in terms of the corely strategic angles in Russia, but of late we see Russia being more proactive in the defense and the other discourses taking place in Southeast Asia.
Christina, do you, within ASEAN, and in terms of ASEAN's potential opposition to or challenge to this trilateral bloc of Russia, China, and the DPRK, do you see a divide between ASEAN states who have maritime borders and those who are more inland focused?
You mean like a division or just?
Yeah, just a division in terms of how they perceive threats or how they choose to engage with different players.
Definitely, I think as our discussion pointed out that right now there's already pre-existing disparity within ASEAN. Countries like Vietnam and the Philippines, because they are maritime, their maritime domain is being threatened by China. So that prompts them to have more closer ties with the US and even Japan and other countries in the region. But Laos and Cambodia don't have this kind of threat. So the varying level of threat perception and the source of threat makes the internal, the bloc of ASEAN not as unified.
Okay, but thank you both very much.